All right, Mick.
We're live.
Well, good evening, everybody. And it's not even evening. We've got a great show going for you with Master Coach's Weekly Buzz, but our normal introduction has been temporarily shut down by the internet. So we're going to go live here directly, and a little ad lib from myself, Mick Haley, who's going to introduce our program for today. We have Rivalry Week, and this is pretty exciting because any of you that watch collegiate volleyball, one of the most special times for all collegiate teams is when you play the team that you most want to beat. And you usually do it twice in a season. And it's pretty exciting. And we have some special rivalry coaches on today. And the first one I'd like to introduce is Joy McKenzie. Joy is the head coach at Long Beach State University. And she has had a storied history. She's been a national championship player, All-American setter for Long Beach. She has also been assistant coach with the 49ers when they went to the Final Four. And then she's been an assistant coach with UCLA when they won the national championship, even though my team was supposed to win that year, Joy. Very bad by you, but that's all right. She's now the head coach at Long Beach, been there 4 years, got her feet on the ground. And this week she has a special rivalry coming up with the Wahine from Hawaii. And to do the interviewing on this with Joy, we bring in her former head coach, Brian Gimolero, and we're going to reunite Joy, you and Brian, and you guys go at it, all right?
All right.
Joy, let me say a few more things. Hi, Joy. I'll say a few more things about Joy. Joy was, I was really lucky and happy to be able to coach Joy. There's several stories about her, but I think that we coached 6 All-American setters, Joy being one of them. And of all of them, and there were some great ones, I don't think I've ever seen a player have the rhythm of the game that Joy had. Joy, she set in rhythm. And if anybody can get an old copy of her playing, I think it would be beneficial for them to watch. Joy was one of the greatest athletes I've ever coached too. She went on and played internationally. She owns one of the most successful volleyball clubs in the country, Mizuno Long Beach. So it's an amazing story. So, and this continuing. All right, so let's talk about Hawaii. First, I remember recruiting you. And did you know anything about the Hawaii Long Beach rivalry before you came? Joy came in 1990, 90, 91, 92, and 93. That's when she played. So did you know anything about the rivalry?
Yeah, we didn't have internet, so I didn't know much. I just knew that both programs were at the top, right? I just knew that, they were top 5, 10 program. That's all I knew coming into play.
So when you got there, what were the matches like with you in Hawaii?
As a player, we had the deepest respect. I learned that from our players, from our older players and our coaching staff, just with the preparation going in, just the deepest respect for Hawaii and the program. And I think the other thing that drove our rivalry was, we were on a mission. We wanted to win the Big West and get a bid into the NCAA tournament, and they stood in our way. So those were 2 of the things that drove it. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me, the third thing that really drove the rivalry is, and people don't talk about as much, is, when we got to Hawaii and we started competing and I was a freshman, the passion of our coaches between you, Brian, and Debbie and Dave, Soji, this is what really drove me as a player, is just to see you guys fighting with us on every point, challenging the refs. My favorite thing was when you and Dave would go at it. That was one of my favorite things. Our team would just, that was our drive. When we saw that happening, when we saw our coaches fighting for us, it was just on, So I learned that my very first, match at Clem Gym in Hawaii. it was just all out there, so.
Yeah, people don't remember what Clum Gym was. You want to say anything about that place?
Oh gosh, it was old gym. It had a splintered floor. I remember walking in, the crowd was unbelievable. There was a line outside. I don't know if they were selling spam musubi or hot dogs or whatever it was, but it was like a line outside waiting hours before the match. You got in the match, people were on the floor. You couldn't see anyone's faces. There was tea leaves, because people were waving these tea leaves. I walked in that gym and I was just floored by the fans. I mean, the other thing I think that just fueled the fire for us were the fans. I think my first match there, one of our players, Christine Romero, ran into the crowd and to play a ball, and the crowd pulled her in. And all I remember is not playing the point, but our team running over to pull Christine out of the crowd, and it was just, it was a fight after that. The fans really fueled the fire at the in the gold mine and at Clum Gym.
I remember that incident, and it was a big mistake by that crowd to pull Christine Romero into that. If you guys don't remember her, no. That was the only person you don't touch. People literally were flying off her as she went in. And then you went to the you went to the final. Well, you played in the finals in 91 and went to the Final Four in 92 and then won in 93. So 3 years of that. Do you remember any of those matches with Hawaii during that time? Do you remember, or just remember the Final Fours?
No, I remember battling against Robin.
Yeah.
Robin's a little 2 years younger, I think. And I remember battling against Robin for those years. I do remember as a coach, going there, and we had Cheryl Weaver on the team. And this fueled the fire as well. And the internet now was out. And I remember there were some threats. Cheryl was such a big time player that there were threats against Cheryl on the internet. And I remember this. You weren't on the internet much because you didn't know how to get on.
Oh, that's right. Although you guys showed me, and as you were an assistant at that time, and actually there was some really derogatory things said about Cheryl, some racial things said about Cheryl, and then some scary things about what they were going to do to us.
Yeah.
And we actually shut down Volleyball Magazine's chat room there because it got pretty bad. And that's when we had the police escorts and
and I do remember walking into Clum Gym, and they did the announcement, and the crowd, it's 15,000, it's just amazing. Hawaii has an amazing crowd, and they're announcing, and I remember them announcing Cheryl, and Cheryl getting booed.
Oh yeah.
And I was really upset as a coach. I was furious. I was like, this is it, we're going at it. But I realized that, Cheryl's such a good player, they were scared of her, and I realize that now, but at the time I thought, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So
they were booing us when we got off the bus 2.5 hours before the game. But they booed everybody. They booed the red shirts, but Cheryl got the worst of it. Yeah. No, I remember. Yeah. So what are you looking
for? So Joy, Brian talked a little bit about this police escort. Can you give us some more details about this? We had a little bit of a history lesson offline. So
we've heard some rumors here. We need some good information, Joy.
I don't know if I can. I remember there having to be a police escort. I don't remember a story behind it.
No.
You might have to share that, Brian.
Yeah, my job was to keep you guys isolated and not worry about that. I actually got the phones turned off in the hotel too. Because that was.
I think that people were calling the hotel phones.
Yeah.
We were getting phone calls to the hotel rooms. Yeah.
So we had to turn the phones off because, wow. Anyway, Joe, talk about now, the future? What's going on this week? What are you feeling?
Well, we're excited. We're preparing for Hawaii. A lot of kind of what we're talking about here, with Sabrina Hernandez is our assistant coach. She's also an alumni. I think for our coaching staff, we talk a lot about the rivalry and the history of it because they don't get this passed down to them. and they don't know about it. And I was trying to explain to them, like, this rivalry started way in the 80s before me, and then it was big in the 90s. And then Hawaii left our conference and came back, and now it's our, opportunity to build this legacy back up. And so we talked a lot about it. The kids are fired up and ready to go. And I always, of course, give them all those little stories of what really fueled the fire to really they love that. They love all those little stories. So we shared that with them this week. And, for us, it's, I talked to Ruth a little bit about this because I got a little feedback on our team, of course. But just getting back in the gym and being a more disciplined team, keep doing what we're doing. And I think if we can be a disciplined team, we can take down Hawaii. But it's got to be in practice, and we got to be able to transfer that. And we've proven it a little bit against USD and had a good match against Fullerton. And we're, looking for some more consistency.
What was sad, Joy, what I think about now, or even during that time, was those matches, according to the writers in Hawaii who wrote volleyball for 30 years, they said a couple of our matches were the best volleyball matches they had ever seen. And that, but they weren't publicized throughout the nation. And there was a few times we were number 1 and number 2, and nobody in the nation really understood it. And then because they didn't seed the tournaments, they didn't seed it. One of us wasn't going, one of us wasn't advancing every year. And that, as a coach, that was the sad part for me, not to see that level. I mean, the teams you were on, Danielle Scott's team with Michelle Burton and you, and then Cheryl Weaver's team with Taiba and, oh my goodness, Brittany. There was teams, Tara Cross's team, they didn't see, and that was too bad. But I wish you the best of luck. I did want to say, by the way, one more thing. Your father was a great volleyball player, and I was lucky enough to meet him. And then your mom was a great volleyball player, and she still, she doesn't talk much about their playing days, but now, and then you and your husband were both great players. And now I know your daughter's going to pass on another generation. And I hear your daughter's just doing great.
She's doing great. Thank you. Well, this is my connection to all these people on the Zoom is I know all of you through my mom and my dad. So it's just so great to be on the show. And I was just looking forward to it. So I just thank you all for having me on.
Joy, I know, I got to play with your dad at Kenneth Allen out of Chicago.
I have photos of you guys.
Yeah.
Black and white.
That's scary.
Your brother was trying to get me to find pictures of us. And I've been going through old photos. So you can tell him I'm still looking, but he'd asked me if I had any pictures with your dad in it, and I was going to share them with both of you. I haven't run across them yet, but I've got a bunch of boxes yet that I'll get into. So
I love it. I love it.
Joy, I didn't mean to leave out your brother, David, the Olympian, and he's my favorite of all. So
he's everyone's favorite. Stir in the pot conversations. But Ruth, I just learned a little history between you and my dad.
Oh yes. Oh, you mean when I was off?
My mom says you were his girlfriend.
We didn't know that. That's a good one.
On the show.
And I need to tell you that our time is up on that comment. But Joy, it's great to know you. It's great to communicate with you, and we wish you the best and continued success at Long Beach State. And
Joy, notice how she's cutting this off.
Right? I know. I thought we were going to have another show.
It's
another show. It's another show. It's not the right show.
Thanks, Joy. And we're going to catch up on that last statement for sure.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Joy.
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's bring on our next guest from the Southeastern Conference. And Mick, you have the pleasure of introducing our guest today.
I do. And I actually, because of your absence, got to introduce the first one. So we get to compare now to see who's the best person to start the show. So you have to go back and look a little bit. So if we don't rib each other, it's pretty funny. But yes, I am excited to have head coach Lindsey Devine on from the University of Alabama. Lindsey is in her third season of coaching the Tide. Previously, she was the head coach at East Tennessee State. for 16 years and is the winningest volleyball coach there ever. Has got stolen away by Alabama's athletic director and is rebuilding that program. And she's walking into something this week with a new coach at Auburn. The state of Alabama, as you understand, has 2 heavyweights. Now, I'm not putting down any of the other Division I teams in Alabama, but these 2 heavyweights, it goes on the wall as to who wins in rivalry week. And Alabama versus Auburn this week is coming up. Lindsey has to go to Auburn to play. So Lindsey, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. I'm so honored to be around such great people.
Thank you.
Bob is going to take off on this first. Since
Well, Lindsey,
I'm gonna throw you, Lindsey, to the 2 SEC coaches because they know about SEC rivalries. So you got Ruth and Bob, and they're coming on. Bob, are you going first?
Yes.
Yeah, I want to tell Lindsey, just prior to you coming on, Lindsey, we were talking to Joy from Long Beach State.
Yes.
And, I think, at least as the master coaches, we were kind of going over different rivalries. And we talked about the Long Beach State, Hawaii being probably the biggest rivalry for volleyball, the volleyball rivalry in the country. Because they were so often they were 1 and 2 and battling all the way. And, but I think when we look at Alabama and Auburn rivalry, it's a little different rivalry. It's kind of a football rivalry, and you really could say it of just a sports rivalry that's known all over the country. And the interesting thing for me, and maybe I'd be interested to hear if you had the same thing happen to you. When I first went to the SEC, I was coming from West Point, Northeast school, and before that I was only at Springfield College, a small private school up in New England, and that's kind of what I knew in terms of my college career. You coming from Canada is a little different, and so I come down to the Southeast Conference, and I am absolutely amazed that I'm seeing people coming in, Wednesday before a football weekend, on their boats, docking on the river, spending 2 or 3 days, and not going to work, just 2 or 3 days to get ready for the football game. And that carried over into all the other sports. And I really couldn't understand it. I'm wondering whether you've had that same kind of experience now going down to Alabama.
A lot of those things that you have said, I've experienced. We moved from Tennessee, we moved to Tuscaloosa. Obviously, word quickly got out when we moved into the area that we were in. And of course, I am the Alabama person. However, I see the flags flying of Auburn. So my understanding is when somebody new moves into a neighborhood, the first question they ask, Alabama or Auburn? When a baby is born here in the state of Alabama, they don't give the pink blanket or the blue blanket. They ask you right away, is it a crimson blanket or is it an orange and blue blanket? So I've learned those things going through, and I'm really young in this. However, in our first year, we did go to Auburn, we beat them, and my phone blew up from people saying, good job, you've secured your job for a while longer. And I'm like, unless you know these things, you don't know. So I was like, okay, yes, it's an important win, SEC in my books, but it's even more important because of the Auburn and Alabama rivalry in football, which lends into every sport here. The football, yes, that is the Iron Bowl is really important in everybody's mind, but it trickles down into every sport here, this rivalry.
It's unbelievable. It's so hard to explain to even our listeners that might have a lot of experience in athletics. There's nothing like it. I was just completely shocked. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. Pat Head Summit was pregnant, with her boy, and she was coming back from Virginia, and they were going to land the plane, because she was getting ready to deliver, and she told the pilot, no, my son is not going to get born in Virginia. We're going to Tennessee. I mean, it's incredible this rivalries.
the sense of pride that goes along with that. You know, there's a lot of prideful people. But you know, when you're in a state and there's no professional teams, the fan base, you know, they have a line. I think a line in Alabama, that if you're on this side, you're an Auburn fan. On this side, you're a Bama fan.
So Ruth, when you were in the SEC, you were at LSU. How did that go? How did it go with you in Alabama?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Bob and I talked earlier, but there's like three things. You have conference rivals, you have cross-town rivals, and then you have in-state rivals. And I think when you first get into a football town, you understand that you can't have your volleyball match right when they're tailgating, because what you want to do is you want to make sure you do it early enough where you get all those tailgaters to come in and they're out of control because all of them have been drinking, especially in Louisiana. I mean, so our rivalry with Alabama was always with a personal. So Stephanie Schluter was at Alabama, and then Vivian was her assistant. Then she went to Ole Miss, and then Ole Miss became a rival. And Maryland was at Florida, that became a rival. And then they went to Kentucky, and Bob and I, of course, it was a rival all the time. So it's always interesting to me. And my question to you is, do you think that winning or not, does it create more rivalry? And then my second part of that question is, does it have to be football? Could it be basketball rivals?
I think the first question is, the expectation is, you're playing Auburn, you will win. I mean, it's just an expectation.
Yep.
And the emphasis and the lead up to it, I think it's just a higher level from a variety of people, from the emails to the texts that I get. And then just the buzz on campus that you hear when we are entering into football time, but in any other sport, the alumni that support the different programs, they come back when it's that game, whether it's in basketball, softball. I mean, that is the game that they try their best to revisit on campus. And then the second question you asked, to remind me what you said there, Ruth, about whether it's just football. It starts there, but it trickles down. And everybody just, you have this, it's an understanding. And there's a lot of history that goes back, from the football series to all the other sports. But I'm pretty proud to say right now, Alabama for volleyball leads the series 52-33. And we have won 9 of the last 12 meetings. And we have played Auburn more than any SEC school in our conference. So I know that much.
So what are you expecting? What are you expecting with this match? So you're going in there, you've beaten Alabama, but you haven't beaten this coach. This coach called timeout last year and just took a break and didn't play. And you guys were playing. So now you're meeting this guy for the first time. This has got to be a big deal between you two, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think our players, obviously the ones that are the juniors and the seniors, they understand a little bit of the significance of the game. But, maybe I'm kind of going off on a tangent. Freshmen and sophomores have no understanding as such as kind of what a normal year is like. But our staff is actually in the gym right now, and we are walking through some things, some scenarios, and really honing in on our strengths. What I expect is that they're going to be pretty pin dominant, and we know that. But I think there's some weaknesses in how they set up their blocking scheme, and we're going to expose that. But we just got to stay true to ourselves. We're working through some kinks right now. We got a couple of injuries, but regardless of what we have going on, we just got to make sure we trust our process, because we're looking for the long-term vision of the program. And it's not where you start, it's where you finish. However, I say all those are the right things to say. I know the emphasis of this match.
So Bob, what are the keys here? What are the keys in this SEC rivalry stuff that you've learned? What do you want to share with Lindsey?
Well, you probably want to make sure that you practice at least once with the band in the background and, somebody throwing something on the floor and, all the crazy things you can think of just so these kids stay focused, even though there's going to be a lot of distraction. But I'm sure Lindsey knows, how to get her team ready. I'm interested, you mentioned, as Joy did, she had, Long Beach State was having some injury problems. How is the health of the team and what are you looking for? Let's talk about your team a little bit going into this match.
Well, I reached out actually to Mary Wise today because, there was a match, the Mississippi, I'm kind of going off here, but a Mississippi State match. And, I'm so happy for Julie Darty. I'm so proud of what she's doing in her program. But I think what we have to also remember is that, when you're at the top of your conferences and you're always kind of that person, Mary's still just a person. She's just a coach. And so I checked in on her to make sure, hey, how you doing? I think it's important during this time. And she said to me, I've seen both perspectives of the luck meter. And I thought to myself, the luck meter, you need a lot of luck in your life. You need a luck in this professional sport. And for us right now, our luck, we've kind of been battle tested. An injury, fluky injury, our starting outside comes into the match against LSU, jumps into the middle of the huddle at the end of a great play and sprains her ankle. Luck's not on our side.
Yeah.
The two-time reigning SEC Defensive Player of the Week for us, Drew Cook, knew that she was out of position and slaps her hand down on the floor, breaks her radial. So she's out for 3 weeks. So, those things, I don't think when I go back to Mary, it's the luck meter, it's just not on our side. It's swaying right now. And we just have to, let our players know that we're going to go through these bumps along the way. However, it's how we deal with these. It's the identity that we are trying to reinforce within our culture, that we're going to go out, play hard, and keep true to ourselves and play our game. We might have some new people that haven't seen the court to the same extreme as we have up to these last 13 matches. But, on any given day, you never know which way it's going to go.
Brian wants to know if you're going to win.
Okay, guess what? I'm back on. Sorry, guys, but we're out of time. Lindsey, I'm sorry I didn't get
I'll keep that question until later, okay?
That's exactly
I'll answer that, Brian, after we play. How's that?
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, all I've got to say is let the luck be with you here.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you very
our
much.
Time is up. Thank you, Lindsey.
Thanks,
for being
Lindsey.
on the
Thanks,
show
Lindsey.
today.
Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Good
Thank
luck.
you
We
so
wish
much.
you continued
Bye.
success with your Alabama program.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, I'm going to do a little news flash here. Today, September 29th, AVCA USA Today Super 25 National High School Volleyball Rankings, Week 5 at number 1, Marymount High School in Los Angeles, followed by the teams represented by states. Texas has 3, Kansas 2, Georgia 1, Florida 1, and California 3. Head over to USA Today HSS.com to follow the AVCA high school rankings. In a recent podcast, She Competes, it was stated that Title IX and NIL will be a conversation when the universities get involved with monetizing the number of male athletes versus female athletes. There are now 41 companies now offering NIL assistance. Want to find out NIL legislation by state? Want to find out NIL policies by institution, by marketplaces for student athletes, car deals for student athletes, or if you want to have questions on NIL for high school, international athletes, tax implications, head over to www.bestofcoachesports.com. Registration is open for 2021 AVCA convention in Columbus, Ohio, December 15th through the 18th. Jump over to avca.org and save $100. We are now on to our buzz reaction. Boy, today, I'll tell you something.
Boy, we're
This-
on.
This is not my day. Had you noticed it, you guys?
Well, we have, we've noticed you on and then off and there for a few minutes and gone.
All right,
And
let's try it.
there you go.
Wow. For those joining us for the buzz reaction today for the first time, you should have been in the buzz the first half. These guys were great. Now, it looks like Mick got cut. No, oh, John, he's going to class and going to volleyball practice. So today we have our master coaches recap the buzz show and give their thoughts on what rivals mean to each of them, as well as jumping into a short discussion on what RPI. And of course, we're going to go to Brian toward the end of this because this is his most favorite thing to talk about. 'cause he loves it. And then
Yeah,
we're
well-
going to talk a little bit about the upcoming top 25 rankings by master coaches. So master coaches, let's begin our short recap from our show today.
Well,
Well,
my
the short
first
recap
takeaway-
is I have buzz reaction
ahead.
up and no one else does. So I'm right on top of things today.
All
All
right.
right, I'll get on it. My
I
bad.
get mine too. I just, I can't deal with all the harassment today of everything that's
Oh,
gone
we
on.
were so kind, Ruth, when you
Were?
got, I felt bad that you kept getting knocked off on the internet.
I
we-
bet you did it.
We missed you, Ruth. We missed you. That-
Yeah,
we
really.
were- We were panicking.
No, you weren't. You guys were good. You just
I-
missed the music and all that.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to dance to. That was what was wrong. I enjoy the dance every week,
Yeah.
But Brian, you were saying something. Go.
Well, my first takeaway is maybe you don't jump in the middle of a huddle after you score a point for Alabama. You don't run up and jump in the middle of a huddle. I don't know if that's too wise an idea to begin with.
So you know who's famous for that? Can you
UCLA.
remember? This is UCLA. You remember
Yep.
Terry Condon doing
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Oh,
Ruth, you remember this?
oh, yeah, because we beat UCLA in Texas, at Texas, for the AIW National Championships. And the next day in the newspaper, Terry talked about how many people were sick. That's why they got beat. Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, well, she also jumped in the huddle, sprained her ankle, and couldn't play the next day in one of those NC2A tournaments. And unbelievable.
I remember.
Is celebrating because of the last hit, and she went down in the huddle. I've seen more people get hurt. And how about the people running around the bases and jump on home plate and blow an ACL?
Yep.
We've seen that on Sports Center. So
Oh.
don't celebrate, folks. But
If
these
you-
rivalries do bring out special things. Brian
Yep.
understated, I believe, how good the Hawaii Long Beach matches were of the past. They were electric. And Joy tried to bring out Clum Gym. If you never played a match in Clum Gym, it was like playing in Gregory Gym with about 4 times the noise and that sort of thing before air conditioning came in. Those were unbelievable matches. And, we highlighted Auburn and Alabama today because people miss those kinds of rivalries in other states because maybe those teams aren't necessarily ranked in the top 5 or the top 20. But you don't think those kids don't give everything to win those matches? And there's been some great ones. You guys asked me a little bit to talk a little bit about the Texas A&M rivalries. And those were unbelievable. When I first came to Texas, I was told, if you don't do anything, you beat the Aggies, and you beat them every time you play them. And I got that from an old timer. And so I learned right away, no matter what my record was or what we were doing, that I prepared for the Aggies. I'm sure Brian did that for Hawaii. I'm sure Bob at Tennessee. Who was the one school, Bob, that you had to beat at Tennessee?
Well, when we first got there, it was more about trying to win within the state, at least from my perspective. And then I quickly started to learn about the rivalry. And at the time, Alabama with Stephanie Schluter was a top program. So that rivalry became our biggest rivalry. Was Alabama, Tennessee, and that's still a rivalry, because of all the other sports.
Hey, and not
And-
until 1981, when I went to LSU, there was a big rivalry between us.
Yeah,
Did you forget?
Yeah, no, didn't forget.
Yeah, so you're taking on all of the top women in the field that time, right, Bob? I'm sure you
Yeah,
were
I
real
was. I
popular.
always
Yeah,
got
I-
stuck with the tough women that I had to deal with.
Hey,
Well-
Georgia was the only one with Feldman. He was
With Sid
there.
Feldman, yeah.
Sid
Yeah, but
Feldman, that's
everybody
right.
else was the women coaches.
But well, at least you had somebody to hang out with, Bob.
Yeah, he
when
could
I
at least
first went
understand
to-
me. He was the only guy down there that understand what I was talking about.
When I first went to Texas, I was the only male coach in the state. I believe David Shackle had been at A&M, but resigned, and
Terry Condon came in.
Terry Condon came in. And so when all of us would get together at a tournament, there'd be all the women at one table. And finally, Katrina Crawford came over from Lamar and said, "Mick, come on, you're a coach. You can come sit with us girls." And so she was very kind to bring me in. But this rivalry with A&M was pretty special. I'll give you 3 instances. First of all, if you've never, and you probably haven't been in G. Raleigh White Gym, that was the basketball arena at A&M at the time. And arenas are famous, like Club Gym, Brian, right? Arenas are famous. The Pyramid's famous. The Gold Mine is famous if you talk about matches in those facilities. Bob, you had a little tinker box where you bring band sticks in and beat on seats and stuff at Tennessee. And so arenas. So we go to A&M and we play, and it's filled. It's filled. And a number of things happen at G. Raleigh. First of all, we actually won the first match. And I couldn't believe this, but a bunch of A&M guys in military kind of gear come down and just beat the living daylights out of Hookem, our mascot. And we're in women didn't have locker rooms at that time because we were just starting. So we were in a storage unit, little facility, and the Hookem comes in, he takes his head off, and he's got bloody nose and a big bruise on his ear, and they just pounded him, and nobody did anything. I thought that was terrible. We need to call the police. They said, that's what you get for coming over here. Just take it and go home. And so that was the first thing. The second thing is that as the rivalry got more and more, the core would come and they would be part of it. And every tradition at A&M was followed. If you've never seen their yell leaders, you need to see their yell leaders. They are much different than anything you've ever experienced. And they would bring revelry, the dog. They have a core dog. And they would put a corpsman behind my bench with the dog. And we knew this was coming from past games. So we finally went out and had the manager, I think it was Kathy Pfeiffer at the time, buy a box of dog biscuits. And so I put them in my pocket. And we're sitting on the bench, and every time I stand up, that dog barks. So just before I stand up, midway through the match, I slide dog biscuits underneath the bench, and that dog goes right for the biscuits. And I stand up, and the dog doesn't bark, and everybody's booing the dog because they're mad because revelry's not after me. And one other story I have to tell you about over there that I thought I was really smart, because here's what happens. Your team gets introduced, and everybody in the A&M cheering section all over the gym pulls up a newspaper and holds it in front of them and shakes it as if we don't care who's being introduced. And so they just do this stuff. So I would stand up, and they would all put the newspapers down and yell, "Sit down, bus driver," in unison. And I remembered a baseball game I saw. Billy Martin was coaching for the Oakland A's, and the best base stealer in the league was on first base, and he made the pitcher throw to first base 12 straight times to try to wear the runner down, diving back into first. So I said, idea, right? I'm going to stand up so many times, I'm going to wear these people out. Well, all I did is create a total frenzy in that gym. These people got louder and louder and louder. It was the worst thing I ever did. We came out of there with a win, but it was awfully close. It was in 5. So those are the kind of rivalries that I had with Texas A&M. I don't know about the rest of you. Did you have anything like that? Ruth, you were at Houston.
When I was at Houston, it was too early to have rivals because that was AIW days. You had Texas Women's University, Texas Lutheran, Saul Ross. It was more, not so much about football, basketball. It was more about that. However, my biggest one was our match at LSU when we're getting ready to play Tulane. We came out, it was before the football game, everybody surrounding Mike the Tiger's cage. Everybody surrounded. Tulane had come to Baton Rouge and spray painted the Tiger green. Now we're talking about that rival between LSU and Tulane was as good as any other rival throughout any other time. But then it's like what I told Bob, then I don't know, I took a break here and got cut off. But the one thing I was going to say, I think there's a lot of rivals, and I'm going to say this personally, after being in the Big Ten. Okay, so then I spent 2 years in the Big Ten, and I can tell you we had an unbelievable rival with Illinois. And the reason why is because they had never beaten Illinois. So, and especially at their place, we're talking the same Gregory Gym atmosphere, full packed house. Carol Cars was the AD there. And I walk in, and before we get there, I ask the players, what are the things that bother you the most? Because they said the crowd was loud, they flashing cameras, they were setting all the sets tight to the net and pounding balls in warm up. And we went all through the thing. So guess what? I asked Mike, would they not take pictures? I didn't, couldn't do nothing about the crowd. We didn't watch their warm up. We set all of our balls on the attack line to hit. Carol Cars is laughing at me, saying, Ruth, you're not even warming up. An hour and 15 minutes. We beat them 3-0. So there was a rivalry. And then they came to our place and we beat them 3-2. So they're in Minnesota because Stephanie was there and she was at Alabama. Oh no. And then the girls got together in the Big Ten and supported each other against the guys. So I think there's some other rivalries that, are a little bit different than what, I don't know if you guys have those where the guys get together and want to beat the women, but we definitely, because I got a
Guys
dozen.
never do stuff like that, Ruth.
No.
Ruth, that's
never heard of
terrible. You
anything
think about
like
the
that.
animal, think about the animal activists now. If you spray painted the tiger
Oh,
green,
no, I
I
wouldn't
mean,
do that. I wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, hey, look at this. I got a dozen yellow roses at my office the night of when we beat Illinois. Now, I'm not going to tell you who sent them to me, but it wasn't Mike Hebert.
Ruth,
But so-
I'm impressed that you guys ganged up on the guys. I've always felt that to be true. I just didn't realize it was true. I thought it was.
Yeah, no, they
being
organized it,
paranoid.
right? Hi, Brian.
What's that?
It
You
was
didn't know they
organized.
actually organized those.
Yeah, and I thought I was just being paranoid, it was
No,
true.
so this show was worth it to find that
No,
out.
no, I got it.
I gotta tell you, in the volleyball I know, you never had a friend. You were always ganging up on the next coach, and the next coach was ganging up on you.
What difference did it make?
Yeah, it never was girls against guys from my standpoint. It was always who's the next coach.
Well, Ruth, I didn't know you felt so insecure. You had to gang up on us and just give us straightforward.
Insecure. Okay, you want to start there? Okay, here's the deal. You talk about coaches, Mike Hebert, Pittsburgh, New Mexico, Illinois. You know what? There's certain things coaches do
Yeah.
that I'm not going to say.
Well, Mike would call me before your match all the time.
Oh, you're not. But you know what? I didn't realize you had so much BS.
Yeah, no, there's a lot more where that came from.
All right. I think we ought to switch gears. See,
We got it.
Yeah, how
folks
about
out
we
here-
have Brian kick off our.
No, I've got hey, hello, I'm back on.
We're
Okay, now
sorry.
we got Brian.
Good try, Bob. Good
Yeah,
try. You
good.
you'll
Bob,
get
it's-
muted next.
I'm looking at the time and it's time for us to go
No,
to
hey.
RPI.
I think I know the time. Okay. Brian, since the
Yes,
RPI has not come out yet for this fall, and I know you love the RPI, could you explain to our viewers that might not know what it is and how it is used in sports? And I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I don't get cut off. It's amazing that John was going to put Mick in charge. Okay, let me go to this. Okay, I'm going to share this. All right, so we've got a screen shared. Now, remember, guys, This is not this year's RPI with West Point at the top, Bob. All right,
This
so,
is last
Brian,
year.
yeah, this last, okay, so you go for it, Brian, and tell our viewers
Well,
about RPI.
first, it's a rating index, and it's used by all NCAA committees. Volleyball uses it more extensively than anyone that I know, and it's based on percentages. You get how high you rank depends on 25% of it is your winning percentage, 50% 50% of your rating is based on your opponent's winning percentage, and 25% of it is decided with your opponent's winning percentage. So it's your winning percentage, your opponents, and your opponent's opponents. So that's how it's set. Now there's so many fallacies in that because it doesn't take into consideration. Well, let me go further, is that for several years, the volleyball committee used RPI almost, in some years exclusively, but almost exclusively with some geographic considerations to try to cut down cost in competition. But basically they went with the RPI and how they ranked all the teams for the tournament. The problem with several things is, for example, if you play a week, there's no home and away consideration. Baseball, for example, considers home and away. A home win is not as big as a road win. Also, they consider wins against, it's more direct in strength of schedule, meaning that if you go and beat Stanford, it's a lot more important than beating a RPI team that's high, but not a great team. So it's in this system, you might, for example, in this, if you beat Army, West Point right now being number one, you're going to get a lot of points. But why is Army number one? That's just, they're not the best team in the country.
So why are they there?
Because of the percentage.
Okay.
Your record is only 6-3. It's a pretty good record, but the teams of the 6 teams that you beat, they had a high winning percentage, and their opponents had a high winning percentage. So there's so many fallacies in it.
So wait, before you go on, so the strength of the schedule would really probably be a major consideration for Army.
Yes. Now they think they have strength of schedule because of your opponent's winning percentage, but that's not enough.
Okay.
Everybody wants a recipe to get an answer. And now you see that so many things are taken into consideration. Other aspects, other formulas are taken into consideration for basketball and football. You would not go by RPI only. And then one of the real fallacies in my mind in RPI is if you are in a conference, and you could be the best team in the nation, but if you're in a bad conference and you're winning in your conference, you are winning every match 3-0, your RPI would actually go down. It would get worse. It would get worse the more you played because your conference is weak. So you could be a team, and this happened to Western Kentucky last year. If you could be a team that it beats the top 5 teams in the country and then goes to your conference, and we're going to beat all 5 in preseason 3-0, and then go to your conference and end up 15th in RPI or 20th in RPI. And so it's a fallacy. There's so many holes in it. So that's the way I.
So can I add some clarity to this? So why this is important? Why this is important? It's not just who's number 1 and who's number 100. It's important because the first 16 teams that are put in the brackets at the end of the year get to host. And they not only get to host in the first and second rounds, assuming that they continue to win, but they get a chance to host in the regionals also by where they're seated at the end of the year. And if the committee uses only RPI, then it's leveraged by many of the teams because the good teams are going to only play each other so that they can keep at the stack, hoping to land one of those top 4 positions. And that's why this is so important to talk about. If you look at a couple of situations over the last number of years, one that sticks in mind, there's 2 that stick in mind. Penn State, for instance, has been out on the East Coast. They have hosted year after year after year because they've been top ranked. They've been able to keep their top rank by how they scheduled. So that means teams like Temple and teams like that have to come to them to play in the first and second rounds. In only 1 year, Bob, coaching Temple, beat Penn State at Penn State in the first or second round, Bob?
In the second round.
Second round. And Bob's team then went on, and that's the only time that Penn State did not go on and have a chance to host in the regionals in that time period when they were so strong. Texas has went to the Final Four 9 times in a row. Think about this. They went to the Final Four 9 times in a row, and I believe 8 of those times they played 4 of the 6 matches, the first and second rounds and the regionals, in their facility to get there. I could name others in the same situation, but what master coaches enjoyed the most this fall is how the coaches of the top teams went out and scheduled matches against other top teams and gave people a chance to play. And it just lit up college volleyball for this year. I mean, the interest and enthusiasm, the attendance has been 3,000 to 7,000 in many facilities right now. We've never seen that. And I think it's due to, 1, the COVID year, 2, the fact that the coaches are now a little bit more confident. But when they get to trying to manipulate the system, they're going to go back to scheduling only against teams that they perceive to be top 4 or top 8 teams, so they can stay in that group. For 1, they want to be one of the top 16 seeds, and 2, they want to be one of the top 4 seeds to gain a hosting of the regionals. Now, those 2 things are primary to deal with when you're looking at a ranking system. So that's why Brian's talking about this, and that's why it's important that we maybe shed some light on how maybe it could be better in the future.
Well, I think the model is there. There's several models. One is do what football's doing. Get their, football committee and really take everything into consideration. That would happen if the press really was involved in volleyball. If they cared, the press would jump on some of the behavior, some of the decisions that are made by the committee, but they won't. It's the same as what you were talking about with the rivalries. It's like all the rivalries in this country in volleyball are important. They're very, very important.
Sure.
But the press doesn't cover. You better win. As a coach, you'd better win, but the press really doesn't look at it, right? And so the same is true in the volleyball committee, is that you're in a tough spot. I remember, Mick, we had a really good team, and we played. We were in the top 16 many times, and but they didn't seed us. And we played Stanford, UCLA, one of your really good teams that went to the Final Four. We're playing you guys first or second round all the time.
Second round with that good
team.
Like
we played Pepperdine first round and Stanford second round, and that was when Pepperdine was really good. And so it was really tough. And I just didn't think it was very fair to the athletes to get on.
Well, Brian, was that based on the RPI, or was that happening because of finances and they wanted to keep teams in a certain region?
Right. This was actually a pre-RPI, except for the top 4 teams, and they were seeded. And then it was all geographic, so then the geometry, I wish the geography was the same. It's the same, kind of the same now. They're moving more. I wish they moved them as much as they did with the basketball. We were in 28 NCAA tournaments and never left the West Coast. We were the only team that never left. And we were we couldn't go. I mean, we didn't move. and everybody else got to move. Now I think there's a little more movement, but I wish it was like basketball, where they tried to seed 64, because basically I think would be about the same cost. You
Okay,
know,
last thing, before we jump into the top 25 master coaches, one of the thoughts for the viewers is when they're watching and they're chatting in all the groups after the matches, before the matches, and this would address what you guys just covered, and that is the RPI. A lot of viewers and texters are saying, why is USC playing so-and-so? Why is Kentucky playing so-and-so? Why is, when you know that it's going to be, in most cases, a 3-0? Well, for the viewers, they need to know it's the strength of the opponent's schedule who potentially could be winning those conferences. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So our last topic here is master coaches, their thoughts on the top 25. What are you guys thinking about?
Mick, you're
Well, I think we're not going to use the RPI.
Hey, now, Bob, that was, you get.
That's good, Bob.
And you know what? Brian gets a minus because he still doesn't have his buzz background yet.
No, this is on purpose, so people understand that you could go to either one.
Oh, so because, so he
Good
doesn't
job, Brian. Good
Thank
job.
you.
Brian, that's so that you don't get mixed up between Bob and Mick and you.
Yeah, that's it.
Or you can vax and not vax, you know, there you go.
Okay. We've
Well,
got
Mick,
about
you're
a
the
minute.
expert here. Tell us what you got.
Well, right now, the numbers say that the coaches are doing a pretty good job with the poll. In fact, I would say from my limited experience at really looking at the polls, this is one of the better jobs that the coaches have done. There are some little things like there's been some bias like, well, we know Nebraska's good, but they're just playing other players. Well, you know, if they're just playing other players and losing, then they go down in the poll.
Yeah.
So Nebraska's one that's probably too high. That should be lower than 12 because they have shown losing at home after they've been ahead 2-0, believe it or not, and almost losing to Omaha at home, having to come back and win in the fifth. That shows that if they choose to play other players and didn't win, they should be put down until they show that they beat people that earn their way up in the poll. And I'm not negative towards Nebraska. I mean, this is their choice to do this. The polls just have to reflect what they choose to do. But I think the polls have got it pretty close. They've got Pitt at 2 and Louisville at 3, and they're both playing at that level. Whoever thought the ACC was going to be 2 teams in the top 4 this year? I mean, that's pretty good. Kentucky gets a lot of credit for their effort and still being good, but you know, they really haven't beaten anybody yet. Maybe one team, Stanford, I believe, and that's the only team they've beaten in Stanford.
Hey, Mick, I hate to interrupt you, but our time is up. And thanks for joining us today for the buzz reaction.
Well, the important thing, Ruth, is we got to let the viewers know that we're going to put out a
Okay.
top 25 starting next week.
You know what you could have done? You could have chatted that to Mick, and then he would have done a great job of that. And then I wouldn't have to interrupt him. Isn't that right? All
There you
right.
go.
So
All right.
your master coaches is now going to put out a top something, whether it be 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, whatever it is, but beginning next week. All right. A very special shout out to over 100 guests who have shared their insights with our viewers the past 71 weeks, guys, 71 weeks. For those, and we still are talking. For those coaches that are interested in our consulting service, go over to our website, www.volleyballmastercoaches.com. Click on the contact form and you'll hear from us.
Have we aged? Have we aged?
God,
Yeah.
I have. I don't know
71
about
weeks.
Guys.
Have we aged?
Don't forget to take advantage of our Master Coaches Stream 18 full-length on-demand video series by heading over to Instagram, VB Master Coaches. And don't forget 2021 AVCA Convention in Columbus, Ohio, December 15th to 18th. And you may jump over to the avcaconvention.org to register today and save $100. Be sure to tell your friends about the weekly news show and be alert that maybe Mick will start his own show. And thanks for joining us today, and see you next week on The Buzz. And don't forget to send your questions or your feedback to us so we can address those.
We have to get a hold of that mute button.
All right, now we are